We are done with the ribbing and we're at the beginning of the round. I like to do the sewn bind off, the Italian bind off also known, but we have a 2x2 ribbing and it goes well with a 1x1 ribbing. So basically what we need to do is get to a point where we have a 1x1 ribbing, and there are many ways to get to this point. I will show you my way, but you can do it however you prefer. The round begins with 2 purl stitches, and I'm going to purl them because I want to begin with a knit stitch. So these stitches will be worked at the end of the round. You can also remove the beginning of round marker or leave it to the end, that's fine. I'm going to do it in bulks, and I'm going to use a double pointed needle, the same size needle or less than my knitting needle for the rib. I measured my hip circumference where the garment reaches, and I added a little bit and I multiplied it by 3, and this is the yarn I'm going to need for the bind off. I also always add a little bit of yarn, but if you run out of yarn, it doesn't really matter. You can always get a new strand of yarn and continue, and then just hide the tail. So don't worry about it if you ran out of yarn. It's a lot of yarn. We are going to pull a lot of yarn at the beginning, and the more we proceed, the yarn is going to get shorter and easier to work. If you're making a really large size, then perhaps you should start with half of the length and then the other half do with a new yarn, because you are exhausting your yarn as you pull it through the stitches again and again. If you see that the yarn is getting really, you can't work with it anymore, cut it, leave a tail to weave in, and start with a new yarn. First, we want to just take a bulk of the ribbing. So let's say we'll take 1, 2, 3, 4 pairs of the knit stitches and 4 pairs of the purl stitches to begin with. I'm going to slip the first 2 stitches, knit stitches, to my right hand needle. They are going to be on the front needle, and then the purl stitches will go to my double pointed needle. Then the next 2 knit stitches are going to be held on my right hand needle, and the next 2 purl stitches on my double pointed needle. So knit stitches to the right hand needle and purl stitches to the double pointed needle, and just take a few pairs. And you want to end with purl stitches on your double pointed needle. So my purl stitches are on my double pointed needle. Now we need to take the knit stitches and slip them back to the left hand needle. All the knit stitches we slipped. These are the purl stitches that the yarn is connected to, so these are going to be left here on the right hand needle. And the right hand needle is not in the game. We have the left hand needle with the knit stitches, the double pointed needle with the purl stitches. Because it's in the round, I'm starting without the setup steps like I would if I would make it flat, but I want to mark the first purl stitch and the first knit stitch. So I'm going to place a little marker on each of them. I will use these markers at the end to finish the bind off. So one marker is on the knit stitch and one marker is on the purl stitch. And let's take the needle and just begin the bind off like we normally would. So it's knitwise into the first stitch and slip it off, then purlwise into the next knit stitch and leave it on the needle. Pull the yarn through, make sure the yarn is under both needles, and yes, it's gonna take a little bit of time to pull all of the yarn through. Work slowly and with patience. And I always hold the yarn with my right hand just to make sure it doesn't tangle. So that's the first step. Let's pull the yarn, make sure that we are getting close to the previous stitches, the purl stitches that are on our needles. So don't let it be far away and get a gap. It will show later on. We want to have these stitches close to the last stitches. And now we're going to go to the back. So purlwise for the first purl stitch and take it off the needle. Then we're going to go knitwise from front to back into the next purl stitch and leave it on the needle and pull the yarn through. And again, make sure just for the first two stitches to give it a little tag and make sure everything here is kind of close to each other. From now on, the stitches should be natural. Don't pull it too tight and just keep track when you sew them. So knitwise, front needle, we are finished with the back needle, front needle, knitwise off, purlwise on, and pull the yarn under both needles. Then back needle, purlwise off, knitwise on, and leave it on the needle. Pull the yarn and make sure it is under both needles. If it's over, it's going to create a yarn over. And I'm not pulling too tight. Front needle, knitwise off, purlwise on, and pull through. Just until we have all the yarn pulled through the stitch, not too tight. Leave a little bit of space between them. And back needle, purlwise off, knitwise on, and pull the yarn through under both needles. Front needle, knitwise off, purlwise on, pull the yarn through, and back needle, purlwise off, knitwise on, and pull the yarn through. We're just going to get to the point where we are done with all the purl stitches and see what to do. So front needle, knitwise off, purlwise on. See, this is a yarn over. Don't let the yarn go over the needle. Back needle, purlwise off, knitwise on, and pull the yarn through. Front needle, knitwise off, purlwise on, and pull the yarn through. And back needle, purlwise off, knitwise on, pull the yarn through, and we are getting to the end of this section. Front knitwise off, purlwise on, and back purlwise off, knitwise on. And now we have worked once every stitch on the needle, and when we are going to work the second stitch, we're going to need a second stitch on the back needle as well. So I am going to work the first pair on the front needle, so it's knitwise off and then purlwise on, and now I'm going to need to add some stitches to the back needle. So we're going to leave the needle, the sewing needle, here for a minute. We have the 2 knit stitches on the front needle, and let's go ahead and add some purl stitches to the double pointed needle. So I'm slipping the knit stitches to the right hand needle. I'm holding everything with my hand so they don't come out. And now the purl stitches, I'm going to slip my needle, my double pointed needle, and I'm going to use my left hand to pick up the next purl stitches, and slip the knit stitches to the right hand needle and slip the purl stitches to the double pointed needle. And we need to hold everything, just do it very, very slowly so nothing comes off any needle. I'm holding the purl stitches and slipping the knit stitches to the front. I'm holding the knit stitches and slipping the purl stitches to the back. And again, taking it to the back and knit stitches to the front and purl stitches to the back, and we are stopping with 2 purl stitches. That's where we stop slipping stitches, and we're going to place the needle so the stitches are at the center, so we can slip all the knit stitches safely to the left hand needle without losing stitches on the DPN. Okay, now we have the knit stitches at the left hand needle and the purl stitches on the DPN. We can slip the DPN so the stitches are on the right end. We can pull the right hand needle, we don't need it anymore, and we're going to continue with sewing. Now we have a new bulk, we can continue working. The last stitch we worked was the one here on the front needle. We can see that the yarn is coming purlwise from right to left into the stitch. So that was our last purlwise on. So the next stitch will have to be a back needle, and we're starting from scratch. We have a purlwise off and knitwise on, and we are just going to continue the flow. So knitwise off, purlwise on for the front needle, then purlwise off and knitwise on. And every time you finish a bulk, I suggest to take a little pause and take a look at what we have. So if you see that it is too tight, loosen up a little bit your sewing. If you see that it lays down pretty natural, like this, so it doesn't flare out and it doesn't bunch up, it just lays naturally, then it's fine. Your tension is fine. So I think the secret is just pull the yarn until it's all out, not getting everything tighter than that. And if we stopped in the middle of the work and had to go and come back, so how do we know where to continue? We can take a look and see where is our yarn coming from. I see that the yarn is coming from the stitch on my back needle, and I can see that it's coming from front to back. So the last thing I did was a knitwise on. I finished the stitches to work the stitches on the back needle. So next I need to start with a pair on my front needle, and that's a knitwise off and purlwise on. So just check where your yarn is coming from, and you need to go to the other needle and begin working the next pair. So it's always back needle is purlwise off, knitwise on, front needle is knitwise off, purlwise on. That's all there is to it. So we're going to work our way on up to the beginning of the round marker and see how to finish the stitches there. Okay, so just work. Sew all the circumference and we'll meet here at the end. I'm on the last pair, so it's a knit off, purl on, and then purl off, knit on for the back needle. And now I don't have the second stitch for the purl, but remember that we placed 2 markers at the beginning because the first 2 stitches, the knit and the purl, were worked only once, and each stitch is worked twice. So this is where we do the last step to connect the last stitch with the first stitch. So I'm going to slide my needle all the way to the other side and place the knit stitch. Let's put the needle down. I'm going to place the knit stitch, so I'm just pulling the marker a little bit. I take a look at the mount of the stitch. I want the right leg of the stitch to be in front. I don't want it to be twisted. So right leg of the stitch is in front of the needle, and I mounted the first stitch back on the front needle. We can take out the marker now and take the needle back. Let's place it in the middle for a second because we want to take the purl stitch needle and do the same with the purl stitch. So let's pull the marker to find this first purl stitch, and let's find out the mount of the stitch. We want the right leg to be in front when we mount it on the back needle. So the first stitch is now back on our needle. Let's take out the marker and slide it back. So we want to slide the stitches back to the left hand needle, so we are on the right side of the needle available for us. And now we only need one step for each needle. We only need to knit it and drop it, and then purlwise, but we can also drop this stitch because it was worked once at the beginning of the round, and pull through. Now let's go to the purl stitches. So that's a purl and drop and knitwise, and take it off and just pull the yarn through. So all of our stitches were worked twice, and the end of the round is connected to the beginning of the round, and you can see that it is invisible. Now we need to hide the yarn on the wrong side, and when we are hiding the yarn here, weaving the end of the yarn into a rib, we don't want to go sideways, because then we prevent the fabric from stretching. We want to go vertically. So let's find, I'm going to just pull a little bit here, make sure everything is connected, not too tight, not too loose. And I'm going to find the first knit column that is next to my yarn. And I want to find the direction. So I look at the leg of the stitch. I see that it is leaning to the right. So I want to insert my needle 90 degrees to this slant. So if it was this leg, I would come from this side, 90 degrees. But if I'm going into this leg or this leg, then I'm coming 90 degrees from it. I want to insert my needle under the leg, then go over to the right and under the next leg, and over back to where I started and under the next leg. And this is how I just insert my needle and working all the way just to where it's comfortable. And that's enough that my needle can handle. I'm going to pull my yarn through just a little bit. Everything should be quite natural. I can go all the way up to the rib if I want to make sure I have a lot of yarn caught there, so it's not going to be unravel. And I think that's high enough, and I'm going to pull my yarn through. Again, don't pull it, don't squeeze your ribbing. Make sure it's naturally in its length. And if you're still not sure, you want to go back a little, then we can turn the work. So let's find the slant here on the next leg, and the slant is to the left, so we want to come in this direction. Let's come here under the first leg and then work our way up. And this time I'm not gonna go all the way to the edge, because I don't want my yarn that I cut, the end, to be right here at the edge. So I'm going to maybe go halfway. That's enough. And I can pull my yarn through. Don't pull too tight. And I can cut my yarn here. I'm going to leave a little bit of a tail here because I'm going to block it still. I want it to be flexible enough and have enough room for the blocking if something moves here. And that's it. It's invisible and our bind off is done.